Hello, welcome to the Awakened and Aligned podcast. My name is Shannon Kaiser, and I'm your host. I am also the author of several books on really feeling better from the inside out, everything from the self-love experiment to adventures for your soul and return to you. And I have a brand new deck coming out soon, Guidance from Gaia, that is all about how to connect from really to earth energy and connect inward to our own heart by tuning into the benevolent spirits that can help us all around. So a lot of exciting things, but one of the most important things that I'm excited about is something that I've been doing over the past 4 weeks now, about halfway through my own program. I'm really excited to share today because on the podcast, I bring on a guest that can help us live our life with more self agency and really to advocate for ourselves from a place of dismantling the ego. How does it sound to like not be so stressed out? A lot of the times, our stress, our anxiety, our fear comes from life experience. Of course, I know this firsthand, but it also comes from the way our brain processes this information. And a lot of that is ego and fears and unresolved traumas. And these anxieties can take hold. So if you're feeling stressed out, if you're overwhelmed, maybe you're feeling like, should I stay? Should I go in my relationship or in my current role or job? Or maybe you're just kind of like, blah. I've had a lot of clients lately in my coaching practice who are just like, blah, not a lot of motivation, wanting to feel better. They're kind of like in between who they used to be and not quite sure what they're opening up into. And then, of course, there's a whole bucket of people who are like feeling really good, jazzed up, super aligned with their passion, but they're ready for that next level. And so that's what today is all about. And from that place, I wanted to bring on our guest today, who is actually really important because Michael, he is our guest today. And Michael Petegorsky he's the Chief Strategy Officer of Mindbloom, and he works at Mindbloom. And Mindbloom is the company that I am a proud partner of. And I've been teaming up with Mindbloom to do this program. So my self-care and self-love routine over the last several weeks has included ketamine treatment. At home ketamine treatment is what Mindbloom specializes in. And this company I have been so impressed. And so I wanted to first get on here right before we bring Michael on and say, like, this podcast today, it's not an advertisement. They're not sponsoring this podcast by any means. It's not an ad for Mindbloom, but Michael does work at Mindbloom. So you're going to hear us talk about the company, but also as you know, only bring on guests, authors, or companies that I believe in and have fully participated in and transformed within myself. And so I do get people who reach out, want to be on the podcast, but if I haven't experienced your program or if I haven't fully read your book or, then it's a miss for me because this podcast, it's basically about transforming lives. And I'm like, well, if my life's been transformed, then I believe in it and I know the power. And of course, not everything is for everyone. And so today isn't just like about ketamine therapy, but if you're curious about it, you definitely want to listen because we share more about the neuroplasticity, the science behind ketamine therapy. Mindbloom themselves have done the largest study, and it's helped people with their anxiety and relieve it and relieve depression. And for me, it has been radical from when I started my therapy and I was having rumination thoughts. I'm still, as you know, had PTSD. I've been through a lot of really traumatic events. I was diagnosed with depression several years ago. I was able to overcome it. Then it came back, and then I was suffering from anxiety. And then, as you know, I've just been through so much over the last couple of years. And it's like literally rock bottom, dark night of the soul after dark night of the soul after rock bottom, like 4 or 5 things hit me really hard within a short period of a 2-year time span. And then I discovered this company called Mindbloom, and I was very interested. And then I started talking to them, and I became a proud partner. And so if you stick around to the end, I'll share, if you type in Shannon 100, Shannon K 100, you can save $100 on your program. But again, this isn't an ad. What we're really doing is bringing information out into the world of what's happening in the mental health community, in the world of ketamine therapy. It's a process that can really help you surrender and let go. And just in my short time of 3 weeks, having my first part, I'm halfway through the program, the rumination is completely gone. I have so much more space in my day because my mind is not obsessing and I'm opening up to new possibilities. And so I've been full of creative ideas and I've been diving into new books that I've been wanting to read for a long time. My life has become more rich and more full because I'm no longer holding on to things from the past that I just was lugging around for decades unknowingly because I was like, how could people be so heartless and hurt people? Like I just couldn't wrap my head around it. And the ketamine has helped me be like, it's okay. You're not that person. You don't operate that way. And that's the beautiful thing. You can keep being your beautiful heart. You can keep loving people and exist in the world and open up and not let the past pain keep you down. So it's been powerful. And so today when I bring on Michael, we talk, if you're interested in ketamine, this is a great podcast to listen to. If you've been curious, if you've been wondering about, psychedelic medicine, I'll share, if you've been following Shannon or Play with the World or been part or read any of my books, I'm a big component of trying things and exploring new modalities. And plant medicine has really helped me in a therapeutic setting on my journey. But this is very different as far as, psychedelics and plant medicine. Ketamine is very different because even the way it operates, my guide, Michael, one, they hook you up with a clinician and a kind of a coach and a guide for integration. And my guide's name is Michael, different than the Michael I bring on today. It's beautiful. And by the way, Archangel Michael is very high vibrational being. So we got a lot of Michael energy in today's podcast. But my guide, Michael, he said, he does a lot of integrations too and leads plant medicine, some ceremonies. And there's a sacredness to the healing journey when you truly align with it and go into this embodiment. But with ketamine, it is an opportunity to connect to your higher self. It's a medicine and a process that leads you into a place of connecting inward so you can go upward. It's like that's the best way I can describe it. And it's very peaceful. I feel like I go into an hour-long meditation that feels like it's maybe 10 minutes and it's very safe. It's very cozy, if you will. I put my eye mask on and I just go into this beautiful journey listening to music, and then I come out with new pathways opened up in my brain and I can't go back to where I was. Like it's hard to try to bring myself back into that vibration of stress or anxiety. So it's wonderful. And I think you're really going to enjoy our podcast today. I also want to share whether you're into kind of this modality or, you're not interested, this is still a great podcast to listen to because we not only talk about ketamine, of course, we don't just talk about Mindbloom, but we're going to be sharing insights on how you can actually be a better human, how you can live a good life. It's not just about what we do, it's about why we do it and also the behaviors and embodying that. And, we talk about our values and how you can actually tweak your life to really make the little tweaks turn into transformational big changes. And we share, the power of preparation for your self-care routine, learning how to love yourself more, whether it's through different therapies like journaling. And we should talk about the power of mantras, which I'm a fan of, being the author of Find Your Happy Daily Mantras and a new book coming out on mantras next year. More on that soon. So it's a beautiful program. Today is one of my favorite podcasts that I have ever really done because it talks about the mental health, the spiritual kind of aspect of life, as well as the psychology. These are the buckets in which I love and live in. If you were to kind of put those together, you would have everything that I stand for and am here to help in the world. So I hope you really enjoy today's beautiful podcast. And it's such a joy. Michael Petegorsky, the Chief Strategy Officer at Mindbloom, is here to talk to us about how we can really dismantle our ego and live from our higher self. Welcome to the Awakened and Aligned podcast, Michael. I'm so happy you're here with us today. How are you?
Thank you so much, Shannon. I'm wonderful, and it's really a pleasure to be with you here today. I've listened to your podcast, and I've been so impressed with the positive, open, curious space you create for these conversations. I'm grateful for the work that you do to help educate people and provide information that can help them improve their lives. And I'm just excited to be here with you today.
Well, that touched my heart. Thank you. You used that means a lot. The word curious really stuck out. I'm
Mm,
a curious soul, and that is one of the main reasons I wanted to bring you on today. I am so fascinated with my experience so far with ketamine and Mindbloom, but there's a lot of questions from different angles, and
mm.
curiosity is such a beautiful thing because it's what helps us grow. Knowledge is important. So I'd love to just kind of let curiosity lead us today.
I
And
love that.
with that kind of notion and that umbrella, I'd love to just hear a little bit more about you. I know you're at Mindbloom. You've been there for a while. Now you're in a new role. Can you share a little bit more about your experience with both ketamine and also at Mindbloom?
Absolutely. So yeah, I've been at Mindbloom for more than 3 years now. I joined initially as the general counsel, which means I was the lawyer for the company, but I've moved into a new role as the chief strategy officer, where, among other things, I'm helping to tell Mindbloom's story publicly and really help share with people who could benefit from this treatment what Mindbloom is, what ketamine therapy is, and how it can help. And in terms of how I got to the company, the founder of the company is a guy named Dylan Binen, who's been one of my best friends for the last 17 years. And he's someone who had his life profoundly transformed by psychedelic medicine. And he started Mindbloom with the mission of transforming lives to transform the world. What I mean by that is, when you've seen the power of ketamine therapy or other psychedelics to improve someone's mental health, you realize it doesn't just help them, it helps them be a better friend and community member and family member, and it has ripple effects and helps other people. So really, by transforming individuals' lives with psychedelic medicine therapy, we're hoping to transform a lot more lives at scale.
Yeah.
And I was actually, in addition to being Dylan's friend, I was a client before I worked here, and ketamine therapy was profoundly impactful for me, getting over really a lifetime of social anxiety. And happy to share more about that with you today.
Oh, yeah. I think sharing our story is so important. And I love the founder's story. It's wonderful that you guys have been friends and you've seen a difference. I often say in my books, when you heal yourself, you help to heal the world. And
Yes.
that's one of the reasons I was actually really drawn to your company and the values. There's such a mission and a pulse to Mind Bloom. You guys have actually really you've won a lot of awards, but it's not about that accolade on the outside. What I feel is it's actually the energy and the vibration of inside the company. you
Mm,
know just to jump back and then we'll jump back to your story, but when I was kind of deciding I wanted to be a partner with Mind Bloom, it was like a non-negotiable. It was like yes, but I realized that you guys have a core value that's you seek and speak the truth directly
yes.
and possess a high courage and low ego. And
Mm,
when I read that, because I was looking at like different jobs on Mindbloom, I was just so fascinated. And you guys really value integrity and cultivate wholeness and make exceptional decisions, and you practice intellectual honesty. The reason I'm bringing this up is because these are really like heart-based, full vibrational alignments to a better way of living, both for yourself and others. So if you have a whole culture like that, it really breeds better, and you're committed to being better for yourself. Can we just talk a little bit more about that and what your experience has been like as the company culture and how
yeah,
it's impacted your mental?
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. I mean, I've never seen an organization live their values the way Mindbloom does. I think you hit on those four core values we have: practice intellectual honesty, make exceptional decisions, cultivate wholeness, and focus. And those are our values because they are the key things that enable us to deliver transformational care for our clients. And so much of these values involve being straightforward and candid with one another, listening without ego, being transparent, giving direct feedback, being honest about what's working and what's not, telling each other so that we can improve, and really bringing positive intent to everything we do so that when we give each other feedback or join together on a project, if someone says, hey, I think this isn't quite working right, or maybe this could work better a different way, we all understand that we're moving in the same direction. We're all sharing the same mission to transform lives. And so we can have that honesty and collaboration, and it always adds up to a better product and service for our clients who need it.
As you share that, I have like full body goosebumps in such a good way. It's like Care Bear hugging.
No, it's amazing. I mean, client service is the lifeblood of what we do, and we start every board meeting, every leadership meeting, every document that we share always has client stories at the top. We share these anonymous client stories of people who have been helped, just to remember why we're doing this and keep that front and center. And, we have this internal communication channel of anonymous client stories that guides and clinicians and others will post. And if I'm ever feeling stressed or tired and want to refocus my energy, I just go read those client stories. And it always, brings me
Oh,
back to this place of openness and excitement and wanting to do more for people here.
oh, that's so beautiful. And it really is. Just in hearing that, I came from a corporate background and it was
Mm.
suffocating my soul. And it was
Yeah.
a lot basically because the values weren't aligned. So what you just shared is so important for anyone who's listening too. It's not just like, yes, we're talking Mindbloom's an amazing company, but like I said on the onset, this isn't an ad for Mindbloom. What we're really talking about is how to live a better life. And what you're getting at is the values. You are aligned with the values. And when you're working with a
Yes.
company or when you live and breathe your values, it becomes this experience that's bigger than yourself. And it's really how to be better in life. You said we're all working towards the same thing. I mean, how many
Mm.
companies can say that? How many people, even if you just in your own personal relationships, right?
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. So I feel like these are rules for life that we can apply. Just align with your values and live those, embody those, and keep checking in with them. And what you said just now, the power of story. I love
Mm.
every person I've talked to at Mindbloom through email or phone call. I love how you guys are so personal when we start each email. It's a human first company. I feel like I'm
Yes.
knowing the person. It's actually helped me be a better communicator in my own personal business because I love that engagement. And so if you share a little bit more about your personal story, I'd love to hear maybe your ketamine journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe it'll be helpful if I share a little bit about my journey and my own experience, and then I can dive into the science a little bit and how this works under the hood.
Yeah, great.
So, I was someone who had social anxiety from a really young age. And, I can remember in middle school, elementary school, being just having this sense of dread about certain social things and really being put on the spot, feeling like I was going to be found weird or gross or, some other way I was going to be rejected by people. And, some of my friends would probably be surprised to hear me say this because I think as a coping mechanism, cultivated a kind of gregarious attitude. And I often seem very social, but it's so hard for me. And, Shannon, I can't tell you how many times I walked out of a date or a meeting or a job interview because I was panicking. I was sweating. I was shaking. My chest was seizing. I couldn't breathe. And I couldn't get past this. I mean, I tried therapy on and off for years. Eventually, I was prescribed Klonopin and beta blockers, and they could help me get through something. But when I took them, I didn't remember what happened. And so it was this really Faustian bargain where I would say, okay, I can get through this event, but I'm not going to remember what happened. Is that the choice I want to make today? And it was usually the choice because I felt like I had to get through it. But it was really sad. There are gaps in my memory, things from work, from my social life, things that I missed because I was taking these anxiety suppressing drugs just to get through the day. And I wanted something better.
Yeah.
I felt like those were masking symptoms, but not actually helping me heal. And I tried ketamine therapy for the first time with Mindbloom. And from the very first session, it was like unlike anything I'd ever seen before. So,
Mm.
the way it works, you first fill out some, initial surveys and provide some information about your medical history. And then you have an initial consultation with a clinician who's a psychiatrist or nurse practitioner or physician assistant who really does a full, workup of your mental and physical health and understand if ketamine therapy could be right for you. And if it is, they prescribe, between 1 and 3 doses initially that are sent to you at home. And you take that medicine. It's, usually in the form of a sublingual tablet, and you have a guide who meets with you before that session to help you prepare for the experience. And I can dig into a little bit more about what these mean, but that first session for me, you take the medicine, you turn on the audio. It's usually a guided track or music or nature sounds. You turn on this audio you put on your eye mask and you turn inward. And when I did it that first time, it was like noise canceling headphones for my brain.
Yeah. I
All
love that.
this chatter, all of these thought spirals, this fear, this doubt, this questioning, this self-accusation, it all just quieted down, whoosh,
Hmm.
and it was still. And I had this sensation. I was
Amazing.
still aware I was me, but I had this sensation of being in this igloo. It was cool. It was quiet. You know, have you ever walked in the woods in the snow when everything's kind of muted from the snow?
Yeah.
It was like that. It was that quiet, muted space. And
Quiet.
I realized how rare it was for my brain to be quiet. I'm always calculating and thinking and on guard, you know. And in the igloo, there were these doors, and different doors led to different experiences that would normally cause me this anxiety, whether it was a date or a presentation or an interview, some public speaking event. And normally, when I have anxiety, there's this physical sensation of sweating and chest tightness and pulse racing. And that triggers a mental side where I'm then worrying about it. Oh, can people see I'm sweating? What if I fail? What if I do this? And they create this feedback loop. But I could walk through these doors and experience being in one of those situations, but with no anxiety. None of the physical sensations, none of the spirals. I could just inhabit that experience without any of the baggage that normally came with it. So I would spend time in one room. I'd say, okay, I think I see this here. I see how I can be in this presentation in a boardroom without that anxiety. And then I'd walk back into the igloo, go through a new door. Okay, I'm speaking in front of a crowd at a conference, but I'm calm and I'm at ease and I don't feel that sweat, that panic. And it was really the first time I had realized that you could disaggregate the physical sensations and the mental sensations. And it was like this light bulb moment, like, oh my gosh, it doesn't have to be this way. Ketamine showed me a different way of feeling and experiencing these things.
Wow.
And yeah, I'd never seen anything like it. And
Beautiful.
yeah, from there, I was able to keep visualizing that and practicing that and unpacking it. You know, it didn't all change on day one, but you know, you did my second session. I revisited some of those experiences, and I did my third, and I thought about where does this anxiety come from? And you know, I kept going through treatment, and I'll tell you, it didn't happen immediately, but it happened that, you know, eventually I was able to go to a conference where I would normally take two Klonopin and two beta blockers beforehand. And I said, you know what, this time I'm not going to do it. And I remember being in the hall beforehand, getting ready, and it was kind of hot in there, and the other speakers are in there, and I'm getting kind of nervous, thinking, oh my gosh, did I make a huge mistake? But I said, nope, this is what we committed to. We're going to trust ourselves. We're going to trust what the medicine showed
Yes.
us. We're going to believe that we can do this. We've seen it, we've visualized it, we've felt it. And I went out and uh, the panel, I was on a panel and the moderator asked me a question. And I actually kind of flubbed the first one. I got a little nervous and I said, oh my gosh, this might have been a mistake. But the wildest thing happened. One of the other panelists recovered from addiction and had started a company to help others do the same. And she shared her experience with the addiction, and it just kind of inspired me. And when a question came around to me, I shared with the audience that it was my first time doing any public speaking without pills in 10 years. And they clapped. They were excited for me. And I just had this feeling of soaring. And it was incredible. And I did this conference and I was like, I don't need those pills anymore. I'm done. You know, I was able to get
Amazing.
through this and I had that immediate feedback of it's okay. And the sense of gratitude and elation I felt for having worked through that, it was just unbelievable. And it couldn't have happened without ketamine therapy.
Wow. My experience is similar in that way, where you talk about you turn inward. Thank you for sharing that story because there's so
Mm.
many things to unpack there, mainly this part that you shared, at the end too. It's, this anxiety that kind of plagues us and carries around. But what's interesting that I really took, as you were talking, I really put a pin in that part of small, subtle shifts
Mm.
because you're like, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not that we're all looking at some point on our healing journey for that miracle, that fix. And I think that keeps us
Right.
outside and you go, you know what? I turned inward and then I
Mhm.
immediately allowed myself to kind of watch and see and experience. And in that experience, I learned to trust myself. I learned to create a new belief system. And I think
Mm.
talking about the power, just, not just about ketamine, not just about Mindbloom or any time in any place in our life on our own mental health journey, learning how to trust ourselves, I think, is really powerful. And the small, subtle shifts, paying attention.
Yes. You
That's,
you hit the nail on the head right there with paying attention. I think
yeah,
what ketamine and other psychedelics can be really great for is helping you notice something in a session, a way you act or a thought that, often comes up in certain situations. And then you start to notice it in real life and you say, "Oh, I know
yeah,
what this is. I've seen this
yes.
before," right?
Oh
And you
my
get that
goodness.
little recognition.
I just side note, I just had an experience this morning with an email with
Mm,
a kind of an author friend. And there was a time where I would have totally overreacted. So I'm about 3 weeks into my 6 week Mind Bloom program and the ketamine.
nice.
I've seen some radical shifts and
Mm,
changes as far as no longer really ruminating, no longer
yeah,
my anxiety that kept creeping back in at different stages has really, I'm so present now. And
yeah.
I noticed this morning in the way I'm reacting and the way not reacting. I'm like, oh, and it's such a beautiful thing. And I think, my integration guide you talked about in the mind room,
Mm,
when I went, I've done other programs. And one thing I think is important to talk about too with Mind Bloom, the amount of support you have
mm,
from the integration. I have an integration guide where we meet before our first session and then we talked
yeah.
after and we unpack it and that unpacking and then there's the integration circles. I've done other programs and I feel like they just leave you hanging and you're like out there to what did I just experience? But there's such a well-loved support group. And one of the things my guide Michael shared is, you know, when you're setting your intention is everything going into each session and the treatment process. It's about show me, teach me, guide me.
Yes. Yes.
Let's talk about that a little bit because when I reframed my intention, all of a sudden I got greater results, if you will.
Yeah. No, I think this is a really underappreciated aspect of the program and can be really the key in achieving some of those transformations and gaining new insights. I think to take a step back, ketamine, and I can get more into the science of it, but ketamine therapy is actually not super new. It's been used for mental health for almost 25 years now. And in ketamine therapy 1.0, the original version of this treatment, it was kind of just you go to a doctor, you get an IV of the medicine, and you go home. And what we're trying to do at Mindbloom is provide more than just the medicine. And so we thought about ketamine therapy 2.0 as the medicine plus coaching, content, and community. And so that coaching is what you're talking about with the guides. The therapeutic content is what happens, in the app during the session, before and after. And then community, those group integration circles, our online community in ways that you can interact with other people going through treatment together. And so the guide piece, you know, they are there to help you set intentions beforehand and integrate the experience afterwards so that you can take insights you gain during a session and turn them into long lasting change. And setting intentions is really interesting. It's not like an agenda, it's not a shopping list or a roadmap necessarily. It's
True.
often,
Yeah.
just something to at first, make you more present going into the session. Really think about why we're there. I mean, I don't know if you've had this experience. I'm often so busy that I feel like I'm doing things, but I'm also thinking about five other things. And then I'm like, wait, did I actually do that today? I can't even remember because I was
Yeah.
doing five things at
Totally.
once. And,
Yeah.
setting your intentions, it's like, okay, why am I sitting down today? Why am I committing this time to take this medicine to turn inward? Okay, what am I working on? Is there something specific here that I'm curious about that I want to learn more about? And setting an intention, for me, it varies. Sometimes I will start out saying, I think when I first started out, my first intention was like, I want to work on my anxiety. And now they're often a lot more nuanced. Sometimes I'll ask myself a question. Early on, it was, what would it look like to be in those situations and not feel anxious?
Yeah.
I wanted to visualize. I wanted to see what would it look like to forgive myself for some of
Yeah.
the times where I feel like I fell short, where I let myself down, or where I let others down. Sometimes it's a question. Sometimes it's I want to understand why I feel so anxious or what the root of this is. And I've been so amazed at what the medicine has showed me. And my guide was always really helpful for that. Just kind of asking a question, not necessarily telling me an answer, but asking a question that let me get to an answer that really led to some amazing insights during treatment. And so those guides, in that one-on-one coaching, I think are just incredibly important for helping us get more out of treatment. And then you
Yeah.
also mentioned, group integration circles. This is, I think, my favorite part of the program. Guides will lead these circles where people share their experiences. They're non-judgmental, they're open, and psychedelics are unique. This is not like another substance or like another experience that most people have had. And I know for so many of us, when we go through it, we're like, this is wild. Who can I talk to about this? And you can't
Right.
always talk to your
Yeah.
family or your coworkers. Not
Anyone.
everybody's anyone, yeah. And so having a space where people who are having these new experiences that are unlike other things can actually share those and hear from each other and say, oh my gosh, I had that too. Or, I just heard what someone said about this, and it gave me a different lens through which to view my own experience. I mean, they've been so valuable for me to just ask more questions and see my own experiences through different perspectives based on what other people share.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. As you said that, I experienced that for the first time in my guided Zoom circle. And
Mm.
it was the healing that happened just in sharing and then holding space for others. I walked out feeling like, oh my gosh, I just had more insights. And that's something you don't always get with other programs. But what's really interesting, I thought, and it kind of ties to what you just shared, even with the guide and the coaching beforehand, you said they ask questions. They're not there to give and offer advice in the sense. And I think that that also, like, put a pin there, that also is, I always see the world in metaphors,
Mm.
so no matter what path we're on, this also is something we can take into our life. I think so often unconsciously we're going around, especially in the coaching community, healing community, a lot of us who do spiritual work. Something I really heard in the first part of that, integration circle was, especially if you're a people pleaser or recovering people pleaser, like just kind of refrain. And I loved that because hey, hand up over here, recovered people pleaser. I didn't
Yep.
even know that my MO was to just kind of help people through advice. And sometimes I have learned over the last several years by doing this work and in my ketamine sessions, it's shown me as well, the way I can best be there for people is to just listen and hold space
Yeah.
and say, I understand. And is there anything you need, instead of just kind of coming in to save or solve? That is something that is kind of a layer through all of this because we're all on our own journey.
Yeah, I think that's so well put. And I've had a really similar experience. My wife has a great framework that we use with little kids, which is, do you want to be helped, heard, or hugged? And I think
I
integration circles are really heard
love that.
and kind of hugged emotionally, not physically hugged when we're on Zoom. But I
Oh,
think,
I'll take a
and it,
physical.
but I think feeling heard is, it's such a, showing someone that they are
Oh,
heard is a real gift. And I think it's a great, you can have a positive experience by learning something about yourself, and you can have a positive experience by giving the gift of having someone feel heard in that circle.
can I use that for the name of our podcast? Help, heard, or
Please,
hugged.
it's
It sounds
it's
like a
all
just a
yours.
mantra for all of us. I'll attribute you and your wife.
I
But
love it.
honestly, when you said that, my inner child just like reached out in joy. Like if every inner child or child on earth had that, that's really
Yeah.
kind of what we're doing with these programs. And when we're going through a ketamine session, that's you're giving yourself that time to either feel energetically hugged or hug yourself. There, I woke up from a session that was pure self-love, like with my arms around myself.
Oh,
And
isn't that
the
an incredible
yeah,
feeling, those self-love sessions?
yes.
Do you mind sharing a little bit about it? I'd love to hear.
I would love to. And what's interesting is I went in, show me how to open up to romantic love.
Mm,
So I was
mm.
thinking I'd be seeing these like romantic partners and I'd be seeing like soulmates. The whole session was the most divine, gorgeous goddess energy of me loving myself. And I've been on a self-love journey. I have books on it and I thought I loved myself. And through this process, I love myself so much more. There's just so much abundance. And so through this beautiful journey that I went on, it was love everywhere.
Wow.
I saw almost every person I felt betrayed or used or abused by in the past, exes that I was still said I was over in my heart, but still feeling, why did they wrong me? Total forgiven. And
Yes.
and it wasn't even just a forgiveness. It was, I see you on your journey, God bless you. I love you. I release you. And the rumination completely stopped after that
Wow.
session. And in the
Wow.
session, I like how when you were describing your session, you said, I see. It was unlike anything I've seen because I do see a lot of visuals in mine and they feel, it's almost like I'm watching a dream. or watching
Yeah.
myself outside of myself, like a lucid dream, right? It's very safe, and it's so different than any other psychedelic or plant medicine that I've done. I know it's not plant medicine. And so I think I do want to talk to the safety of it, but also more importantly, I
Yeah.
think a lot of people listening, I know I have coaching clients and stuff too. Some people are like, yes, sign me up. I'm ready to try something new. And then others are like, whoa, psychedelics, that's like 70s woo woo. I'm not going there.
Yeah.
But to me, I believe in it. From the space of mental health, I've suffered from clinical depression, anxiety, and I have found self-love, healing, forgiveness through this. So talk to that if you can.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you so much for sharing that. That sounds like a beautiful session, and I'm so grateful and excited for you that you were able to experience that love. It's such a powerful thing when you feel it, and I'm
Oh,
really happy
thank you
for you.
so much. Yeah, thank you.
It's wonderful. Yeah, I'm happy to dive into some of the, the science and the data around this because I think it's really often misunderstood. So, ketamine was actually approved by the FDA back in 1970 as an anesthetic and analgesic. And what that means is that for the past 50 plus years, it's been used in innumerable procedures, often as a, sedative to help people, whether it was a dental procedure or if they were injured, something else. It's in every ambulance you see driving down the street. It's in every ER. It's been on the World Health Organization's list of essential medicines since 1985. And that's all in part because it has this remarkable safety profile. At mental health use, we're actually using it at a fraction of the dose it was used for anesthesia and analgesia. So we're taking an already safe medicine and using it at, 1/10 the dose. And so, I'll talk about more about the safety in a minute, but the history is kind of interesting. It was used in these other medical procedures. And after a while, there started to be kind of anecdotal evidence around doctors that their patients who got this medication for, anesthesia or analgesia for pain started to feel less depression, started to feel better mentally. And they said, well, what's going on here? And so they started running a study. And in 2000, the first study was published showing that ketamine was remarkably effective and fast acting for the treatment of depression. I mean, that study was showing after one session, people
Wow.
had incredible improvements in depression. And since 2000, it's been, 24 years now, there have been over 100 studies published showing that ketamine is remarkably effective for depression and also for anxiety, for PTSD. There's emerging evidence showing it may be really helpful for OCD, for eating disorders, for other issues. And so it
Hmm.
appears to be a really versatile medicine. And, I think what distinguishes it from other, we'll call them last generation antidepressants, there are a few things. One, it's really fast acting. I mean, again, I mentioned, after just one session, people see improvements. A lot of those other antidepressants, people are on for weeks or even months before they see improvements. People, there haven't been a lot of head-to-head studies, but there's really strong evidence that it produces even stronger treatment responses, meaning greater reductions in symptoms than some of those other drugs. And it does so in a way that doesn't require taking daily pills forever. Our treatment program is 6 sessions, and we see really incredible results from that rather than having to take a pill, for years or decades at a time. And
Yeah.
so it's, the evidence is really strong. And, Mindbloom, we've actually now published 2 studies that are the 2 largest in the history of ketamine therapy. And what they showed was that 89% of clients saw improvements in symptoms after just 4 sessions.
Amazing.
60, yeah, 63% saw clinically significant improvements. So, big improvements there that really, make the difference between, depression and not depression or anxiety and not anxiety. And it was remarkably safe. I mean, less than
Yeah.
5% of clients reported any side effects from treatment, and those side effects were really short-lived, meaning they usually resolved by the time the medicine wore off after 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours. And so it's a really safe medicine when used under clinical supervision and used as directed, and it's been really effective for our clients. And so, we've published those 2 studies. We're going to publish more, but that last one that we published was in June. That was 11,000 clients worth of data. And, that's a data set
Wow.
that I think is really reliable and,
It's
definitive
huge.
on these questions. Yeah.
No kidding. Yeah. And just real quick, some of the side effects that might pop up, what are those?
Yeah, people tend to I mean, again, side effects are really rare, but when they do pop up, sometimes there's nausea, and clinicians often prescribe Zofran or something else to help alleviate nausea. There can be some headaches. There can be a little grogginess. There are some other side effects that are really rare, but clinicians go over these with clients, and we have informed consent and other documents that lay all this out. But, really the main side effects would be potentially nausea or headache,
Just
dizziness or grogginess. We
yeah.
recommend, we actually, we require that clients have a peer treatment monitor physically present with them during treatment. And that's someone who's there really to help create a safe space for them. It's not to perform a medical function really, but to help them, get water, go to the bathroom, get something they need. If somebody rings the doorbell, you don't want to be in the middle of a session and have to get up and answer the door. But we've found that this medicine is incredibly safe, but we bolster it by having a peer treatment monitor who's a friend or family member who can be home with you during sessions. And so
And they
when
usually
I
wait like in the other room. They're not in
that's
the room
right.
with you. So it's very,
No.
yeah. My mom, she's good. She'd like it's a beautiful process. They just check in. My mom says I'm smiling. She comes in and it's just like a whole, she says such beautiful energy and peaceful.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Um,
that's been my experience too. My wife has acted as my peer treatment monitor, and there's nothing quite like doing a session, feeling great, and then taking off my eye mask and seeing her there. It's a really wonderful part of it.
Yeah, there's something about that too, allowing yourself to receive help, ask, for those
Mm,
fiercely independent kind of, I can do it myself. That's part of the process. And it's healing to allow people in on your healing journey. I love sharing my after kind of what I experienced with my mother. It's helping our healing together in our family. So to
mm.
that point, we have just a little bit of time left. I could
Yeah.
definitely talk a lot longer, but I wanted to touch on two things with you. One is the
Sure.
neuroplasticity.
Mm,
Interesting enough, during my self-love session, I call it, where I was like thinking it was going to be about romantic love, there was a part in my journey where, if you've seen the movie, I think it's called In and Out, where Inside Out, where the
Inside Out.
yeah, so
I
inside
love
out,
that
there's the
movie.
emotions inside, inside it was like my emotions, or inner Shannon was in my mind, and there was like a big sandstorm, and it was all the chaos, and what it represented, I was outside of it. I wasn't feeling, I was watching and
Mm,
seeing, but I saw that these were all those ruminations, the PTSD,
yes.
the all of it. And it was just like this clutter. And inside I was yelling, kind of like Joy did in the movie, where she's like, open the windows. She didn't say that, but she's like, we got to stop anxiety. So in my mind, I was like, open the windows, but it was safe. It wasn't like, hurry. It was just like, come
Right.
on. And as soon as I did that, it was instant peace. The
Wow.
scene stopped, everything stopped, and I heard my higher self, angels, God, whatever it was, or my inner brain say, "These are the pathways opening up."
Wow.
And that was profound for me, because every ketamine session, that was my very first session. Like, wow, welcome to
Wow.
ketamine. And I was
Right.
like,
Here we
where, well,
are.
this is amazing. And so each one has been, I am actively aware that the pathways are opening up. It's opening new
Mm,
areas. So can we talk to the neuroplasticity and also the aspect of your higher self? Because it really
yes.
does feel like we're connecting in.
Yes. I think you really put it nicely. There are really two categories of things happening when you receive ketamine therapy. There's first kind of the conscious or felt experience, and then there's the neurochemical experience. So maybe I'll start with the neurochemical side.
Yeah.
Um, what studies show is that people with depression and anxiety and trauma often have decreased neural activity in parts of the brain that are associated with regulating emotions and mood. And this means there are fewer neurons and they're not connecting as much. They're not firing to one another as much as they should be. What ketamine does is works on what's called the glutamate system and produces and stimulates the release of something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. And researchers, scientists call that fertilizer for the brain, because what it does is it actually stimulates the production of new neural connections and strengthens existing connections, especially in that part of the brain. And so the science is still emerging in this area, but what they're showing is after receiving ketamine therapy and other psychedelics, there's often an increased neural activity in those parts of the brain that were decreased before. And so there is
Wow.
in a literal sense new pathways and connections in the brain opening up. And we believe that leads to, healthier thoughts and moods. And the other side of it, in addition to that, neuroplasticity and new connections, uh, ketamine quiets what's called the default mode network. And that's the part of the brain that is engaged in self-referential thought, emotional processing, memory retrieval, a lot of the stuff that happens, around rumination, which you and I think have both experienced.
Yeah.
And so ketamine really quiets the activity in that area. And so, between the neuroplastic effects and, growth in those areas you want and quieting in those other areas, you get kind of a rebalancing of the brain. And, I think one of the analogies I've really loved is if you've ever gone skiing, there can be a path and then somebody else follows the path and you get these tracks that are just worn down and you keep going down the same paths over and over again. And that can happen with rumination and negative thoughts and those kind of things we tell ourselves over and over. For me, every night I would get in bed and feel okay. And then I would lie down and close my eyes and immediately start thinking about all the things that could go wrong or had gone wrong and just spinning and spinning.
Yeah.
And ketamine can be like a fresh coat of snow. And it'll let you put down new tracks, not go down those same worn paths you've been down over and over, but find new ways to think or proceed through your world. And I think that's incredibly
Oh
powerful.
man. It's like the Zamboni for ice skating, right?
I love that.
Like you gotta
A
get
mind
clear the
Zamboni.
ice. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
perfect.
Mine
That's
Zamboni. Another
perfect.
podcast title. Yeah. No,
Perfect.
that really
And
helps. Yeah.
yeah, and so that's the chemical side. And then there's, the conscious experience. And this can actually vary for different people and even for the, one person in different moments. I think sometimes people have an experience that's kind of a dreamlike state where they're aware, but things are surreal. Sometimes they are kind of meditative and quiet and calm and not really thinking much. Sometimes people have, really strong psychedelic experiences that are sort of hard to describe, but shifting, reliving memories or visualizing things or hearing different parts of yourself or others, speak to you. There's spiritual aspects where people often connect to God or, a Holy Spirit or energy. And then there's this, at stronger doses, people often experience ego dissolution, really, where the self disappears. And that's actually been the most powerful for me. I think I live so much of my life thinking about how do I seem? How am I acting? How are people perceiving me? And when that self drops away and you're just aware, you're aware, but you're not aware of yourself. You're just this kind of boundless awareness. You feel this bliss and love, really, and connection to all things. And so I think
Oh,
those
beautiful.
experiences, yeah, they can all be so powerful. I mean, what they often do, just like disconnecting from your normal thoughts and feelings for a little bit gives you
Yeah.
this new perspective and you realize, oh, it doesn't have to be that way. I don't have to beat up on myself. I don't have to doubt myself. I don't have to worry. I don't have to punish myself for
Yeah.
times where I didn't live up to my own standards. And seeing
Exactly.
seeing that another way of thinking or feeling is possible is such a powerful thing because you don't always realize it when you're in the trenches.
Yeah, it's amazing. And as you share this, thank you for sharing that too, because that's a lot of my experience as well
Mm,
from all those different touch points. And I think what happens then is we start to, yeah, we have these sessions, but it's how our life transforms after. Can you just
mm.
briefly share, maybe you've seen, maybe you shared before we got on the live recording here, how, it can impact our relationships, it helps us make healthier choices, but what are kind of the
Yeah.
outcomes in people's lives?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I can talk about two things here is, one, where do we go? And two, how do we get there? And maybe I'll
Yeah.
start with the how we get there. After the session, we always recommend people journal for a little bit. And
Yeah.
it's not something I did a lot before ketamine therapy, but really I've continued to do it since even when I'm not, doing a psychedelic therapy session. And you often get out of this session and you just have these thoughts and experiences that can pour out of your brain. And it's great to get them on a page. I often say, you know, don't try to write anything, just let the pen start moving.
Yeah.
And it's often amazing what insights come out, even things you didn't realize during the session, or maybe something was amorphous during the session and then it crystallizes afterwards. But you start writing stuff down, and as you come back to, your baseline mental state, you often can look over the page and say, "Oh, right, I identified this pattern." For me, it was like I would identify a pattern where I'm always, well, I'll give you a specific example. Whenever I would have a problem or something come up that would cause me stress, I often would have this kind of attraction aversion thing where I wouldn't deal with it right away, but I wouldn't let it go either. I would just have it at arm's length, always in my vision and always worrying me rather than either fixing it or letting it go. And I had this sensation of like
Oh,
drifting
wow.
down, floating down the river with all my problems floating next to me.
Oh, wow.
And I wrote that down in my journal. And then I would think about it and I'd revisit it. And then when something would come up with work or with a relationship, I would find myself falling into that pattern again and kind of, okay, I'll deal with this later. And then I'd get in bed at night and I'd worry about the thing, but then I wouldn't fix it the next day either. And it was like, oh, right, this is me floating down the river with my problems again. Let's either decide to address it and deal with it right now, or say we're actually going to let this one go and we're not going to deal with it at
Oh,
all, that
wow.
we're not
That's
going to.
amazing.
Yeah, and so I always revisit, floating down that river. Like, am I floating down the river with my problems right now?
So I
And
know
so,
so many people like that. So I'm with you.
yeah.
Oh,
And so,
wow.
so yeah, so often it's that experience of identifying a pattern or a thought or a behavior, journaling about it, kind of crystallizing, saying, okay, I know what this is. I've put a name on this now, and then being able to spot it later. And so, I think what guides are really great for in this integration process is helping people identify what those things are and then maybe come up with a little bit of a plan. Like, hey, next time that comes up, what am I going to do? I'm going to replace that thought. I'm going to replace this what if thought with, you know what? I don't care about what if. I care about what is. And,
Yeah,
I think the
that's
long-term
key.
process, yeah. And this is what gets to kind of the both the chemical aspect and the felt or conscious aspect. I think they really go hand in hand. And so when you're in this neuroplastic window, when your brain now has this fertilizer and is ready to make new connections and start new patterns or let go of old habits, that's when you can really think about these things, figure out how you might want to live a little happier, a little better, a little freer, and start implementing some behavioral change, letting things go, addressing things more quickly, showing yourself some compassion, and really starting those behaviors as soon as you can so that you can help them set in and become just how you are.
Oh, man, as you were sharing that, it's so beautiful. You really touched on it. With the journaling, something that's very interesting, and I know you guys just integrated this, is the talk to text part of
Mm,
of journaling. Have you experienced that yet?
yes. Oh, I love this. I
Yeah.
think a lot of
Amazing, right?
times. Oh, it's so cool. Yeah, and I'm so grateful to our team for coming up with this idea and implementing it so quickly. It's really exciting. But I think when you come out of a session, sometimes, or even when you're in a session, sometimes thoughts are a little unclear, or even it can be weird to sit down and write, or hard to actually hold the pen and sit there and write stuff down. My handwriting is terrible, and sometimes it's even worse after a session. But being able to speak your thoughts or your visions and have them transcribed and written down and kind of summarized for you is really powerful. And I think just a great tool for helping people take these psychedelic insights, which sometimes are hard to
Yeah.
conceptualize when you have a pen in your hand, and help you verbalize them and get them down and then learn from them.
Oh my goodness, I know. And I want to share just my recent experience, and then we'll close out with a final question.
Mm,
Because as we're talking on this, I think it's good for anyone listening. Just in my third session that I had with my Mindbloom, I went into the ketamine therapy session, had my intention and everything. And within like the first 5 minutes, really, all of a sudden I was crying. I hadn't had any emotional cries before. I had all the sessions of self-love, but it was interesting because as I was crying, it was the first time in my entire life. Now, mind you, I'm a water sign. I'm a highly empathic person. I'm highly sensitive. I'm a crier. I used to
mm,
not be able to control my emotions and cried at everything. This was the first time in my life where I was crying and I couldn't feel anything. And it wasn't that I was numb.
mm.
It was an emotional release and it was a beautiful experience.
Wow.
And afterwards I shared, and I couldn't really write because I was still processing. So I talked to text. And
Yeah.
then Mindbloom app has this amazing thing where it's like, we will condense what you just dumped into us in your word. It's like word vomit and share, here's what
Yeah.
happened. And it pulls it into sentences. And in
Yeah.
one complete sentence, it said, your experience of crying without feeling represents a profound shift on your healing journey that you're no longer suffering.
Wow.
And
Wow.
And then I was just like, I felt it and I was like, wow. And then it said, how can you cultivate this new awareness moving forward? It just really showed
Wow,
the inner work is working.
that's
And
so amazing.
I'm so thankful for Ketamine and Mindbloom. I'm thankful for your time today. I think what we've offered is more insights into the program. If anybody has questions, reach out to me. I have emails of people you can reach out to at the Mindbloom team. And also, I'm a proud Mindbloom partner. You guys, everyone, you can save $100 with my code. I'll put all that in the show notes. But Michael, I would love to just close out with anything that else you want to share that you're feeling in your heart. Your higher self is like, let's share this as we
Mm,
close out.
yeah, I think one last thing I'd share is that ketamine therapy can really be helpful for a broad range of issues. We've talked today about depression, we've talked some about anxiety, but this medicine can be profoundly impactful for overcoming grief and loss, trauma, even getting unstuck. We have programs for burnout. There are a lot of ways this can help. And I think when it comes to ketamine, there's a lot of stigma around it and psychedelics, and even just getting mental health treatment. And I hope people listening understand that there are a lot of ways this can be helpful. And I hope if they're curious, they will reach out to learn more because we've helped a lot of people and we have so much ability now that wasn't in the world before to help. And so I hope people will start their healing journeys and will consider us on their path.
Yeah, thank you. And if you feel that call, you feel in your heart, trust it. It's the best thing I ever did. And again, you can just use Shannon K 100 to save $100 off your program. But again, Michael, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for all the work you guys are doing at Mindbloom.
Well, thank you so much. This was really a pleasure, Shannon. I had a blast chatting with you today, and I'm really grateful for you and your time.